Hello, I'm Roberta Barrocas, a PhD student in the Wissenschaftscampus Tübingen research project Digits Grasp Digits, and today I will present you an overview of our project's findings on the relevance of fingers for the acquisition of basic numerical skills. Fingers and numbers seem to be inextricably associated. For example, people from almost all cultures seem to use their fingers for counting. Even adults may resort to finger counting under specific circumstances. This association can be observed in many ways. For example, on a behavioral level, finger sensory motor skills have been found to predict numerical abilities in preschool children. Furthermore, number processing has been shown to be facilitated by either observing or reproducing canonical finger patterns. That is, the mere act of stretching out the three fingers usually used for representing the number 3 makes performing numerical judgments and calculations with this specific number easier. Fingers were also shown to be associated with specific fingers, and that people are faster to identify Arabic digits through a key press when they do so with the finger used to count to that specific number. Finally, on a neurobehavioral level, transcranial magnetic stimulation of a parietal region called angular gyrus has been found to disrupt both number processing and finger representations. Taken together, the evidence for an association of fingers and numbers is compelling. However, the origins of the association of fingers and numbers is not yet fully understood. This is partially due to the fact that most evidence on this association is correlational. Specifically, the direction of the causality mechanisms driving it is still debated and thus remains to be clarified. Does finger use drive learning of numerical concepts? Or rather, do children learn basic numerical skills just as fine regardless of finger use? Furthermore, is the association of fingers and numbers better explained by changes in general maturation, or in other words, caused by domain general variables such as intelligence and working memory? We seek to answer these questions through 3 different studies in which we first critically review the contributions of kindergarten sensory motor skills to numerical development. Then, we examine the longitudinal associations of finger-based numerical strategies and cardinality knowledge. Finally, we attempt to clarify the causal mechanisms underlying this association by means of a net-based training study. In a first attempt to clarify these questions, we summarized and critically evaluated findings on the association of numerical abilities with finger sensory motor skills through a literature review. Specifically, we looked into how finger gnosis, the ability to locate and differentiate between fingers without visual feedback, and fine motor skills, or the ability to move the small muscles in fingers, relate to kindergarten numerical skills. By means of a P-curve analysis, we found that the findings reporting an association of finger gnosis and fine motor skills with numerical skills contain evidential value. That is, these findings are replicable and do not reflect a false positive effect. However, although finger sensory motor skills contribute uniquely to the development of numerical skills, this association may be less pronounced than previously thought, yielding mostly small effect sizes. Finally, we propose an integrative approach to the origins of the association of finger gnosis and fine motor skills with numerical skills. That is, we combine the 2 most well-accepted hypotheses in the literature and argue that the association of fingers and numbers emerges from a combination of functional and redeployment mechanisms, in which the early use of fingers in support of numerical reasoning during childhood might be the developmental process by which number representations become intertwined with the finger sensory motor system, which, however, carries an innate predisposition for said association to unfold. Second, we were interested in how finger-based numerical strategies relate to numerical skills longitudinally. To this end, we investigated how finger-based numerical strategies predict performance in one numerical skill argued to be one of the pillars of numerical reasoning, that is, knowledge of the cardinality principle. This corresponds to the notion that the last number counted to corresponds to the total number of objects in one set. We worked with the hypothesis that children who were more successful at using their fingers to convey numerical quantities should develop better cardinality knowledge longitudinally. In order to evaluate this prediction, we tested preschool children in 4 different measures. First, finger monitoring, or the ability to display numerical quantities by using their own fingers. Second, their ability to recognize numerical quantities expressed by finger patterns. Third, their knowledge of the cardinality principle. And 4, as a control outcome variable, knowledge of quantifiers, which are words used for describing numerical quantities approximately. We tested children in 3 different time points. First, we measured all variables plus vocabulary as a control measure for general cognitive development. 1 year later, we measured finger monitoring and the outcome variables, and 6 months after T2, children were reassessed only in the outcome variables. We ran a hierarchical multiple regression analysis to predict cardinal knowledge at T2, which resulted in a significant final model explaining 16% of variance. Vocabulary and cardinality knowledge in T1 were entered into the model in step 1 and explained 9% of variance in cardinality knowledge 1 year later. In step 2, finger monitoring and finger pattern recognition at T1 were entered into the model and explained significant additional 7% of variance. On the other hand, knowledge of quantifiers was not associated with any of the finger-based numerical measures. The finding that finger monitoring predicted performance in a cardinality knowledge task 1 year later, above and beyond the influence of vocabulary and previous cardinality knowledge, suggests that this association is not underlain by concurrent language skills or knowledge of the cardinality principle, and hints at the importance of finger-based numerical strategies for the acquisition of basic numerical competences. Finally, we sought to address the causality question involving the association of fingers and numbers by means of a tablet-based training study. The app was conceived in a theory-driven fashion and chosen as environment for this training because of its suitability as an interface for learning embodied concepts, as well as its capacity of promoting children's concentration. On the project's first phase, we developed a game-like tablet app for training numerical competences along 3 levels of numerical development. The first game, Counting, aims at promoting learning of the correct number-word sequence and one-to-one correspondence through sequential touches of individual fingers on the screen. The second game, Cardinality, targets the mapping of numerical magnitudes onto number words and Arabic digits by quasi-simultaneous touches performed by multiple fingers on the screen. Finally, the third game addresses the concepts of part-whole relations and initial calculations, in which children learn by using their fingers that numbers may be combined or decomposed to form other numbers. The game is structured around the narrative of a little alien called Finn, who becomes stranded on Earth and, as he has no fingers, needs the child's help to collect stars for his star-fueled spaceship and return to his home planet. On a second phase, we evaluated the app's efficiency by means of a training study following a pre-post design. After testing children for their general cognitive abilities and previous level of numerical skills, we pseudo-randomly assigned them to 3 different training groups. First, the finger app training group. Second, a content-matched control numerical training group, which was trained on the same competences with a training program based on blocks, cards, and other tangibles. Finally, a waiting list group, which received the app training after the post-test. Each training program consisted of 6 sessions of 20 minutes with up to 3 children at a time. All children were post-tested shortly after conclusion of the training. Our final sample consisted of 158 children aged 3 to 6. A paired samples t-test showed that all children improved significantly in an aggregated score of their numerical abilities from pre to post-test. However, an ANCOVA with age and general cognitive ability as covariates and group as between subject variable showed no significant training effect for any of the training conditions, although the control training produced a marginally significant effect. There are many reasons why our training may not have yielded a significant effect, which we will discuss in our concluding remarks. In sum, our studies showed that fingers are relevant for the development of numerical skills. In specific, finger sensory motor skills do seem to reliably predict numerical competences in preschool age, and finger-based numerical strategies predict knowledge of the cardinality principle beyond the influence of domain-general and domain-specific variables. However, the results of our training study did not seem to corroborate the existence of a causal link between finger use and acquisition of basic numerical skills. There are some reasons why this may have happened. First, our children were on average younger than the typical populations in preschool intervention studies. This is due to our decision to include younger kindergarten children in our intervention, which was to some extent exploratory, as there are not many studies involving such young children. Second, we did not control for children's familiarity with touch devices, especially in an educational context, which is an important factor in determining whether children are able to make purposeful use of a tablet app for learning. On the other hand, the materials used in the control training program are much more familiar to children. This familiarity may have driven a perception of the contents conveyed by the control training as more approachable or informative, which could have in turn elicited a more attentive and motivated behavior from children in the control group. In spite of the null results, most children reported having enjoyed the playful interaction with the app, making app-based training programs for preschool children a promising direction for educational interventions. Thank you for your attention, and if you'd like to know more, please contact us or check out our project's webpage.